Tamara Lich.
I used to be somebody that loved Canada Day. It was one of my favorite holidays, and it was always important to me to take my kids down to the activities or to the fireworks, and I lost that over the course of the last few years, and I think a lot of Canadians did. A lot of Canadians did.
There's a difference between being free and being free indeed. It's one thing to talk the talk, and it's another thing to walk the walk. When they find out how much it costs you to really be committed, most people walk away.
If you had a dissenting opinion, you were just vilified. And the convoy and myself is a prime example, you know. We start this convoy, we're advocating for peaceful protest.
They like the idea of freedom, but not the reality of freedom, because freedom is a messy business. Freedom is a messy business.
We're called racists and misogynists and white supremacists and terrorists and insurrectionists.
Justin Trudeau declaring a national emergency now.
There are no people in the world that became free without struggle.
Well, they created this whole narrative. All the evidence that came out at the inquiry, and you don't hear any of it.
Freedom is a messy, radical, flamboyant business.
It was total chaos, you know, and we pulled up on the hill and there was thousands and thousands of Canadians and flags and smiles and hugs and tears. It was so beautiful. You know, we saw that it was growing really fast, so we're talking about safety and peacefully protesting, and, you know, if you see people that are being threatening or acting aggressively, they're not with us. But the messaging that we were hearing back from the media and the government, we were just a bunch of insurrectionists coming to rape and pillage.
They don't just give you the advantage of freedom when they have enjoyed the advantage of your entrapment.
I've lost my job. I've lost my freedom of speech. I've lost my freedom to communicate with my friends. I have a daughter that I don't want her to be seen with me.
But after 2 years of lockdowns, forced masking, and vaccine passports, is there any democracy left to threaten in Canada?
When communist countries do this, when dictators do things like this, freeze assets, go door to door, put people in prison for peaceful protest, we speak up.
We are with them all the way.
You can tell
Having your bank accounts frozen,
what you're made of.
This is a form of fascism going on.
being thrown in jail,
You can tell
because this unlawful activity has to end.
what you're made of.
being denied bail.
We should start with the democracy that is under threat
You can tell.
right next door, a place called Canada.
You can
The
tell.
government also intimated that it was being funded by Russians. So if it wasn't Russians, it was MAGA Americans.
What you're made of.
They couldn't pay mortgages.
Just taking bank accounts, like, people cannot believe that happened, and certainly not that it happened in Canada.
What the convoy did was really reignite that Canadian spirit and again showed fundamentally who Canadians are.
But just the way he labeled those truckers as racist.
It's hard to overstate the historical significance of what we're watching right here. The Canadian trucker convoy is the single most successful human rights protest in a generation.
You gotta be strong enough.
To be confronted with the inherent violence of a swastika flying on a street corner or a Confederate flag.
What the Freedom Convoy really showed people was that the democracy is an illusion. There is no democracy here anymore. You have God-given rights and freedoms, and know them and understand them and fight for them and advocate for them.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the helper who organized the Freedom Convoy 2022, Ms. Tamara Lich. Tamara Lich.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, you guys. Thank you so much. Wow. You can't make me cry because I still have to sing some songs. I don't know if you know how hard that is to sing and cry at the same time. Thank you so much. Wow. It's so great to be here, you guys. We have been so excited about coming to do this for a long time. Daniel asked me months and months and months ago if we could come and play here, and I said absolutely. Because one of the things that brings us together is music, you know, and it just seems so fitting to me that after the unity that we saw happen in Ottawa, you know, that we can come together and do something like this and celebrate together. And it's another just part of me that I get to share with you. So definitely have to say a big thank you to Daniel and Giacomo and New World Sun, who we get to play with tonight. Wow. And obviously, thank you for all you guys for coming. I know Rebel News is here. Well, I'm not sure where they're at, but they're here somewhere. And they've been very amazing to me. They've helped me write a book. As you know, the Democracy Fund is helping us with with my legal fees for my criminal trial, which goes into day 28 on Monday. 28 days to try and prove mischief. I think this has got to be the longest mischief trial of all time. I'm pretty sure it is, anyway. And of course, before I go any further, there's a couple people in the audience that I definitely need to acknowledge tonight that were with us on the ground in Ottawa. And of course, you know, we didn't really know what to expect when we got there. I knew or felt, you know, as these donations were coming in, and it was like $1 million, and the next day they're like, bump it, it's another $1 million. Wow. Canadians donated over $10 million twice in less than 8 weeks, by the way. Yeah. Fringe minority, right? But it was just so, I mean, the support that we had, and even in that, and I remember saying to this gentleman, you know, this was never about the money. This was the statement behind the money, and that's what scared them so bad. But back to my point, I think the number that I was told was there's approximately 138,000 lawyers in Ottawa, in all of Canada, and we had a couple of the best ones that showed up in Ottawa with us, stood beside us on the ground. And the reason I bring up the millions is because, you know, I'm thinking this is great, but every time I have to bump it up, I'd get a little bit sicker, because I thought, when you start talking about millions of dollars, lawyers are coming. In this case, it was good. If I could just have Keith Wilson stand up, please. There he is. Yes. He's been a great friend. He's been an amazing lawyer. He has done this from the good of his heart. He's sacrificed just as much as the rest of us. And I'm just, thank you, Keith. And of course, his lovely wife, Donna. And then speaking of our civil suit, it just so happened that our lawyer from the JCCF, who's representing us, because we're getting sued for $406 million, James Manson is also here from the JCCF. They're heroes. I remember always hearing these nasty jokes about lawyers, but I don't get it. I mean, I think they've been fantastic. Oh, wow. I don't even know where to start. I'll try and give you guys, I thought what I'd do tonight is, before we play you some tunes and we start rocking, I'd give you a little bit of an update on what's happening with our trial. I'm not too sure if you've been following along. So far, I'm very happy to report that the Crown has now closed their case against us. And all the evidence that they've produced so far has been extremely helpful to us. So that's good. Yes. I've seen a lot of videos of me saying, please be peaceful, respect the police, we're going to follow the rule of law, nobody's coming here to be violent, and I guess that's all they got. I don't know. If that's mischief, then I guess I'm a mischief maker. Proudly. So as I said, we're going into day 28, and I can honestly tell you that I never saw this coming. You know, we started this thing, seems like a lifetime ago, you know, and in the back of my head, you know, after I'd reached out to Chris Barber, I thought, you know, maybe I'd start a GoFundMe and we might raise about $20,000 and, you know, get a couple of trucks to drive to Ottawa, and they could stand there with their signs and then get back in their trucks and go away or go back home. And clearly that is not what happened. And thank God for that. You know, we were totally overwhelmed, because if you think back to the 2 years before then, it had been so dark. Just dark and desperate times. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I think about something that happened a few years ago, it's like I forgot those 2 years even happened. It's like they've been completely erased. And the one word that we heard the most as we came across the country was hope. That's the number one word. The second one we heard was pride. Because Canadians, it's gonna make me choke up. Canadians were proud to be Canadians again. And they had hope, yes. Thank you. But you gave it to us. And therein lies the irony. Because we were all in the same boat. We were all feeling that way. And then we started getting these messages and people started telling us their stories. And I don't know, but I would love to find out how many tears were shed on the number one highway by the most biggest, burliest truck driving men you've ever seen. But it was a lot. It was quite an emotional time. So they wrapped up their case. We're going to go back in on Monday. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm positive. I feel positive. I don't feel like we have anything to worry about, because I do truly feel like we're winning. Yes, we are. And we have, you know, the Supreme Court cases that are coming out, overturning Bill C-69 and the straws, the toxic plastic straws that actually aren't toxic. So there's lots of reasons to be hopeful, in my opinion. And even though sometimes I know that we're being bombarded with a lot of things right now, that's how I feel. And I remember saying to Chris as we were driving across Canada, I said, you know, they can't let us succeed here. This protest, they can't let this protest be successful. Because if we fall here, it's everyone in the world's and it did, actually, you know, in hindsight. I mean, I think it was the most successful, peaceful protest of all time. Polite, just like Canada, right? That's who we are. But I remember saying they can't let this succeed, because if we succeed here, I said, well, we don't know what we're walking into, Chris. We could be arrested. We might get shot. I mean, we're from the West, and we think all those people up in Ottawa are crazy. So we didn't know what was going to happen, right? And it's ironic, because for someone, I've only been to Ontario like one other time in my life, but I've spent more time in Ontario, I think, in the last 2 years than I have in Alberta. Which is fine, because I love it. I fell in love with Eastern Canada, I can tell you that. And that was one of my most profound moments, was when we saw all the support that we were getting from the Quebecois. Because if you know my story, you know that before all this happened, I was on the board of directors for a Western Independence Federal Party. We built a party from nothing. And so my first big epiphany was finding out, I think on day 3, I was still sitting on my kitchen table organizing, and I found out that Quebec had 1,000 trucks ready to go. Yeah. And I was completely overwhelmed. And the first thing, my first thought was this has all been a lie. All this division that they've been pushing was a lie. There is no East Canada versus West Canada. There's just Canada. And I think one of the first photos I saw was actually a Quebec man with the Quebec flag and the Alberta gentleman with the Alberta flag shaking hands. I mean, for me, that was a really big deal. That was one of the most profound things I'd ever seen. The second epiphany that I had was coming through Manitoba. And so imagine, if you will, you know, we're driving across Canada, and we thought, well, we didn't know what to expect once we crossed the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border, because we legitimately thought the closer we got to Ottawa, the less support we would see. But boy, were we wrong. We came through Manitoba, and I have never seen crowds like that before. And I looked out my window, and I saw a First Nations, a couple of them, ladies, dancing and drumming in their full regalia. But standing beside them were about 4 Sikh gentlemen. And standing beside them were Hutterite ladies with their children holding thank you signs. And beside them were nuns in full habits. Canada! It didn't matter what color you were. It didn't matter what your income bracket was. It didn't matter what God you worshipped. It didn't matter where you lived in the country. We dropped the labels, and for the first time in a long time, we were just Canadians, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Because that's the Canada that I grew up in. And so I guess I'm kind of rambling on a little bit here, but so we're going back into court. Obviously, I have to also thank the Democracy Fund, as I said earlier, who is funding my criminal legal defense. Yes. Thankfully, I'm very lucky. I mean, I can't imagine. You know, before this trial started, I think the quote was, or the estimate was going to be $300,000. $300,000? You know, so to have organizations like the Democracy Fund there to help people like me and to stand up for people and their civil liberties, the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. Yes, these guys are helping not just me and Chris, but there's others too, you know. The week after our trial, Bern Buchert, you saw the Mandate Freedom on the video. Bern Buchert's trial starts on December the 4th. And we got Chavez coming up. He's from Windsor, and we've got the Coots boys back home, you know. They need all kinds of help. That would be nice. I'm sure that day is coming. You know, as sad as it is, it's not great because this is our country, but all those things I find that they said about us during the convoy, like how terrible we were, and we were taking money from foreign entities, and we were being infiltrated by the Russians, and all this nonsense, right? But you know what's happening is it's all coming back to them, and that's karma. They got caught taking money from Beijing, the Trudeau Foundation. We have this big Chinese interference thing that's going to happen. I don't even know when. I guess they'll get around to that when they get around to, you know, mischief is very important. Mischief must happen right now. But if there's a foreign government interfering in your government, it can wait. It's not mischief after all. So, I mean, just thank God for organizations like these that are helping us. And so I would strongly, strongly encourage you, if you know anyone that needs help that we don't know about, because we want to make sure that all these people get looked after. The one thing that I've always said, I'm so blessed and I'm so lucky that I'm being helped, but there's lots of people that aren't, that aren't being helped by these organizations. But Chris and I always said, no one gets left behind. Nobody gets left behind. So we have to make sure that we're helping all of these people. And I have no doubt that we're going to win. You know, I really do. I've never had any anxiety about this trial, which is kind of weird. Because my joke is, like, I've never even been in Facebook jail before the convoy. Never. Not even had a suspension, a warning, nothing. It's funny how life turns out, isn't it? Where was I? Yeah, anyways, no one gets left behind. We really have to make sure. I think we're winning. I feel like we have God and the truth on our side. I think it was actually, yes, thank you. I think it was actually Keith Wilson that said to me one day, and here's an example. We're at the inquiry last fall. Brenda Lucky comes in and she's got this massive briefcase. Christopher Freeland gets up with a big messy binder full of notes, and they're all coming up with, you know, duotangs and notes. And Keith Wilson said to me, the truth doesn't need a binder. Haven't had to use one yet. So, without further ado, we're going to play some tunes here for you tonight. I hope you love it. My husband, Dwayne, so graciously is also here. Yes. He's been absolutely outstanding. I'm so grateful to have him. He's driven back and forth across Canada now for me. I don't even know how many times. Thank you. I'm very lucky. Okay, so we're going to play some tunes for you. I believe there's going to be a little bit of an intermission. I definitely want to come out at some point and meet some of you. I've had an opportunity to talk to some of you already. I don't think you quite understand how much it means to me and to any of us from the convoy to hear from you and hear your stories and your experience. I mean, that's what this was all about. This was the most Canadian thing I've ever been fortunate enough to be a part of. And in the video, I know I said I stopped going to Canada Day and I had stopped taking my kids, but I'm like the first one there now. Make Canada Day great again.
You know, I had the pleasure of hearing Tamara and Dwayne Lich play last weekend, and they're amazing. Such energy and passion. Tamara's a woman of many talents. Who knew? I mean, we all got to know her through her patriotism and her grace under pressure, and frankly, to have been unjustly punished and imprisoned for 49 days and still have that positive and patriotic outlook on life is just incredible. If you want to help support Tamara Lich at her ongoing trial in Ottawa, you can do that at the special website helptamara.com. By the way, any donations to her legal fees, well, they're tax deductible. You get a charitable tax receipt. We think that this trial is going to vindicate her, and through her, vindicate and validate the entire Freedom Convoy.